Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast. Let's go ahead and get week 43 of today's Tolkien Times underway with Mailbag Monday. Now, before I do, if you're on social media, especially on Facebook, you may see unsubstantiated rumors that it is, once again, despite my best efforts, my birthday. Despite having traveled around the sun 56 times as of today, I am nowhere near stopping. I plan on creating Tolkien content for as long as I'm able. So thank you for your well wishes and for continuing to watch and to listen. Now, on to today's mailbag. Off-air, and please forgive any mispronunciation, writes in with a simple question. Would Fëanor have been able to resist the One Ring? Sorry. To paraphrase The Simpsons' Reverend Lovejoy, the short answer is yes with an if. The long answer is no with a but. Though I think in Fëanor's case, the long answer is just no. I still think, though, that to really get to the bottom of this question, we need to start by looking at how other individuals dealt with the temptation of the ring. Specifically, though, I'm talking about incarnate individuals. Now, Tolkien explains what he means by this in letter number 156, where he's talking about the Astari and how even though they were Maiar spirits, they were in fact incarnate in Middle-earth. He writes, by incarnate, I mean they were embodied in physical bodies, capable of pain and weariness, and of afflicting the spirit with physical fear, and of being killed. So that would exclude Sauron, as well as any other Vala or Maya who would instead be embodied in Middle-earth, but not incarnate. Now, Tolkien explains this as well in letter number 200, where he writes, they, speaking of those spirits, were thus in the world, but not of a kind whose essential nature is to be physically incarnate. They were self-incarnated if they wished, but their incarnate forms were more analogous to our clothes than to our bodies. Now, one carve-out, though. By incarnate, I am absolutely not including Tom Bombadil. Whatever the heck he is, I am not convinced that he is an incarnate the way that Tolkien explained in letter 156. I actually doubt that Tom could be killed. And we know he's not affected by the ring in any way. Not just when he puts it on and doesn't disappear, but when Frodo puts it on and he can still see him. He exists on some other dimension, or maybe all dimensions at once, or something like that. So let's not include him when we look at the temptation of the ring. First up, Aragorn. Now, he is able to withstand the temptation of the ring. Recall in the chapter Strider when he says, if I was after the ring, I could have it now. Sean and I talked about this on the PPP all the way back in episode 126, and I came to the conclusion that Aragorn was actually being tempted by the ring in that very moment. I think Sean actually disagreed with me at that point, one of the very rare times that took place. However, there are a number of factors that enabled Aragorn to overcome that temptation. First up, he knew that he would face temptation at some point. It's not as though the ring's existence was a surprise to him as an heir of Isildur. Second, he prepared himself to face and defeat that temptation. Third, knowing that Frodo would be coming, he chose this particular moment, a moment under his own control and of his own choosing, to face and defeat the temptation. And fourth, all of those things with the additional purpose of demonstrating his trustworthiness to the hobbits. As Paul Coker pointed out in Master of Middle-earth, that Aragorn could easily take the ring from the hobbits by force or fraud and use its magic to win his long-sought throne, and with it the maiden he loves, has not failed to cross his mind. Like every other leader of the West, he is given one fateful chance to yield to its temptation, but he conquers it and is never bothered by it again. Well, let's move on to Gandalf. He's clearly tempted, but also resists. In The Shadow of the Past, Frodo says, you are wise and powerful. Will you not take the ring? No, cried Gandalf, springing to his feet. With that power, I should have power too great and terrible, and over me the ring would gain a power still greater and more deadly. His eyes flashed, and his face was lit as by a fire within. Do not tempt me, for I do not wish to become like the Dark Lord himself. Yet the way of the ring to my heart is by pity, pity for weakness, and the desire of strength to do good. Do not tempt me. I dare not take it, not even to keep it safe, unused. The wish to wield it would be too great for my strength. He knows, in other words, that were he to possess the ring, he would succumb to its temptation. So, just like Aragorn, the temptation is still secondhand. It's the temptation to take or possess and not the temptation to wield. Now, perhaps the most well-known and obvious moment of temptation for an incarnate is the one Galadriel faces in Book 2, Chapter 8, The Mirror of Galadriel. "You are wise and fearless and fair, Lady Galadriel," said Frodo. "I will give you the One Ring, if you ask for it. It is too great a matter for me." Galadriel laughed with a sudden clear laugh. "Wise the Lady Galadriel may be," she said, "yet here she has met her match in courtesy. Gently are you revenged for my testing of your heart at our first meeting. You begin to see with a keen eye. I do not deny that my heart has greatly desired to ask what you offer. For many long years I had pondered what I might do should the great ring come into my hands, and behold, it was brought within my grasp. The evil that was devised long ago works on in many ways, whether Sauron himself stands or falls. Would not that have been a noble deed to set to the credit of his ring, if I had taken it by force or fear from my guest? And now at last it comes. You will give me the ring freely. In place of the Dark Lord, you will set up a queen. And I shall not be dark, but beautiful and terrible as the morning and the night, fair as the sea and the sun and the snow upon the mountain, dreadful as the storm and the lightning, stronger than the foundations of the earth. All shall love me and despair." She lifted up her hand, and from the ring that she wore there issued a great light that illumined her alone and left all else dark. She stood before Frodo, seeming now tall beyond measurement and beautiful beyond enduring, terrible and worshipful. Then she let her hand fall, and the light faded, and suddenly she laughed again. And lo, she was shrunken, a slender elf woman, clad in simple white, whose gentle voice was soft and sad. "I passed the test," she said. "I will diminish and go into the west and remain Galadriel." What a passage that is. Again, Galadriel resists the offer of the ring as Gandalf did, but like both Aragorn and Gandalf, Galadriel had previously considered this, as her comments make clear. Tolkien also makes this very clear in letter 246 to Eileen Elgar. It was part of the essential deceit of the ring to fill minds with imaginations of supreme power. But this the great had well considered and had rejected, as is seen in Elrond's words at the council. Galadriel's rejection of the temptation was founded upon previous thought and resolve. Now, Galadriel is likely the closest analog to Fëanor. I mean, after all, Aragorn is a mortal man, Gandalf's a Maya spirit, albeit incarnate in a living body. But both Galadriel and Fëanor are Noldoran elves. They're both Calaquendi, they're both powerful and mighty. So comparing Galadriel's resistance to Fëanor's is the way that I get to the yes with an if answer. If Fëanor had had adequate time to consider the temptation of the ring, and this is the big if he chose to convince himself that resisting the temptation was what he should do, then yes, even Fëanor could resist the temptation of the ring. The problem is, I don't think he could convince himself that resisting the temptation would be the right thing. Like that passage said, it fills the mind with visions of power, and that's something that Fëanor would have been very, very tempted by. So it's only under those very specific circumstances that he could have resisted the temptation. Give him possession of the ring, you can forget all about resistance. The longer one has the ring in one's possession, the more likely they will give in, until it becomes actually inevitable. As Tolkien writes also in letter 246, in any case, Elrond or Galadriel would have proceeded in the policy now adopted by Sauron. They would have built up an empire with great and absolutely subservient generals and armies and engines of war until they could challenge Sauron and destroy him by force. Tasking Fëanor with the task given to Frodo? Also forget it. Going again to that same letter. At the last moment, Tolkien writes, the pressure of the ring would reach its maximum. Impossible, I should have said, for anyone to resist, certainly after long possession. So the long answer, and this was a long one today, is no. Fëanor at the end might have been able to resist the temptation of the ring if it were in the possession of another. But if it were in his possession, he wouldn't have been able to resist it. And, frankly, given Fëanor's nature, I suspect he'd have succumbed far sooner than most anybody else. Now, folks, that wraps it up for Mailbag Monday. If you have a question you'd like me to answer, please email it to barnabas@theprancingponypodcast.com. Let him know it's for today's Tolkien Times, and I'll get to it as soon as possible, with priority going to supporters of the show on Patreon. Now, if you'd like to help me keep making this show better, please visit patreon.com/TolkienTimes to find out how you can join the TTT Content Council, get a bonus episode every week, mailbag priority, and more. And then join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times for Tolkien Tuesday as we continue in the letters and learn more about the professor himself. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe, follow or subscribe in your podcast apps, and follow @Tolkien Times on social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.